Welcome to Donahue Labs. This is my faceting setup that I've been using now for a couple of years, maybe 2.5. And in that time, I've got a hungry kitty to deal with first. There we go. So this is my setup, my work office, which is nice because I have a nice view out back, a little bit of green to look at. I thought I'd go through, talk a little bit about the machine, the laps that I use, some of the rough that I've got. I got a lot of finished material that a lot of it's for sale, but not everything is posted. And a couple of small changes I've made along the way. Namely, when I started out, I had a folding card table that the machine was on, which wobbled a lot as I worked it, or, as you rock this back and forth, the table starts to move, or if the vibration gets to be a bit much, it can be kind of annoying, and it was pretty difficult to film, actually, because I had to be careful not to do too much. But my in-laws gave me this old table that's been in their family for a few generations now. One of the cool things is that it's got wooden wheels on it. That's a sure sign that it's old. But I guess, their mother's mother worked on it. Morgan did some homework on this when she was a kid. Now I'm doing work on it, and maybe one day my daughter will do some work on it too and continue the tradition. And these chairs are like 80 years old or something, and I'm trying to be gentle with them. Maybe 100 years old, I can't remember now. But anyway, my machine is not quite that old. I think it was made in the 90s. It's a Raytech Shaw handpiece faceting machine. And handpiece just means that the part that the dop is in, that the stone is held onto, is in a piece that you can hold in your hand, as opposed to a mast style, which has a mast sticking out of the platform down here, and that keeps it more, more rigid maybe isn't the right word, but it's more affixed to the machine itself, whereas this I can take it off and look at it at different angles and things. That's one of the perks I like about that, although I wouldn't mind using a mast style machine at some point. And one of the changes I made too late, actually, for what I probably needed it for, was to buy a clear filament bulb. This is like a $2 appliance bulb. I think I got it from Target, but you can find them pretty much anywhere. And the clear bulbs with a filament, it's going to blow it out probably, but that means that when you are faceting and you're checking your polish, if you use a clear filament bulb, then you will be able to see like a line of light reflecting on the facet, as opposed to using a LED style bulb where it's just an orb, basically. It's a lot easier, I found, and what a lot of people recommend is to use the clear filament bulb, and that helps you with your getting a better polish on your stone. And so if we sit down at the machine, it's got controls on the left here. I've run through a little bit about the machine before, so I won't go too in depth, but I usually run around 600 for cutting and, well, mostly for cutting. When I polish really slow, so I'll go at like that speed. Maybe I'll go a little bit faster for a larger facet, or if I'm impatient. And somewhere around there is probably where I actually go to my pre-polish, or for pre-polish, which I'll talk about pre-polish in a minute here as we go through the laps. There's a little water thing, drips down water. You cut wet to prevent dust and whatnot from getting out, and to drag swarf away as you grind away on your stone. A lot of people use oil or other oil-based lubricants. I exclusively use water, just so I don't have to deal with oil, because if you use oil, it's a little harder to clean off the stone as you go, although you can get around that by using like acetone or some other stuff to clean it off in a swipe. But I don't really want to deal with oil touching things. I like to be able to get up and do other things almost immediately if I need to take a break or my daughter bonks her head on something, although I don't get to facet as much while she's home anymore, but that's neither here nor there. This is it's an old Raytech DymaFast 360 grit, I think it is. And a lot of my laps came with my machine, which was nice. It came pretty much ready to go. I just needed a couple sort of filler laps here and there. And so I use this a lot for my preforming and basic cutting down and shaping. But I do have two coarser laps. This is also a Raytech DymaFast. It's somewhere between 100 and 180 grit. The label is worn off, so you can't really tell. But I also have another 100 grit that I rarely use. I've used that on really big stones that I wanted to grind away fast. And I have these oriented in sort of reverse grit order, so we go finer as we go up, just in case something falls off. If like a big chunk of diamond were to pop off of here, I want that to fall down onto this, rather than if it was up here, it would fall down onto my polishing lap or something. And this is a 3D printed stand made by Mike Zinsky. It has a little drawer down below where I have a couple of miscellaneous things like batteries for my caliper and some polishing compound that I rarely use anymore. And we go up from there. There's a 360 goes there. And one of the things I invested in was a aluminum master lap to make sure that my master lap was flat. I was using a plastic one. I replaced it with the aluminum one, and I think that it helped improve things a little bit. Although I think the lap is actually a little bit uneven, which topper laps, they're not super precise, but they do the job for me anyway. And I have so that's my 600. I've been using 600 a lot, and I've actually almost stopped using my 1200 because it just wasn't doing the job anymore. I used to use it a lot more, but I've actually kind of skipped that step now and go often from 600 to my pre-polish, which this is a newer disc. It's a copper plated master lap. So essentially, it's like this master lap, but it has a topper on top, but the topper is affixed to it and flattened and probably lathed to a flat point, or a flat, lathed flat. Ideally, I want that to be up there. And then on top of that is my polishing lap, which is tin. And this is an old school tin lap, so it's very pure tin. And on these two laps, these ones, the diamond is embedded in it. These two both use compound that you add to the lap. And those I keep over here closer to the machine. Let's see. This is one of the investments I made more recently, was in polycrystalline diamond powder. I made a little video about this. This is 3000 grit. I have the evidence here, but I've heard from a couple people now that you want to write the grit size somewhere else on here and not rely on the label, because apparently that comes off easily and starts wearing off. And it's true, but I only use one grit size right now, so I don't really need to do that. And this goes on my copper lap. And then on my tin lap, I use what's in here, so in here is 50,000 grit diamond powder. Actually, right now, it might be 60,000 grit. I originally had 50,000 grit from Mike. He has a pretty good supply that he helped me get started with, and this little bit lasted for a year and a half or so, and then I started to run low, so I decided to reach out and try someone else, and I got some diamond powder from Adam Bigelow of Sunstone, Japan, and I think that was 60,000 grit, but really in terms of polish, 50,000 versus 60,000 is identical. You're not going to see the difference by naked eye, and it's been working out pretty well for me so far. And I keep my splash guard, which goes on the machine for doing the girdle if I have it low and I need to lower this out of the way. If this wasn't here, then if this is out of the way, then it just water flies everywhere, but this corrals it a little bit. And I keep that on a towel over here to dry off because it gets wet, obviously. And that's also where my water supply is. Pokey decided to join us. Water goes in there, and then water drains out from the splash pan here and goes down and around the corner to a. I've been using this 5 gallon. I've been using a gallon milk jug from Costco for quite a long time now. At one point, I bought a distilled water gallon and used that for water before realizing I would be using way too much distilled water, and I didn't want to spend the money and have to buy it and have it in stock and keep it on hand every time I wanted to refresh my water. And the distilled water bottle gallon jug actually just cracked on its own, just sitting here on the table after a month or so when I was using it to refill the water. So be sure to get a nice thick container for your wastewater and your replenishment water if you do something like that, so that you don't suddenly end up with a mess on your hands. Because I caught it just as it started to break, and it spilled a little bit, but not too much, and it was a close call. But anyway, over here in my pickle jar, I still collect faceting swarf. It's about half full again from cutting various things. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I don't know. I can throw it away later, or I can keep it for now and see if I can find another use for it rather than trying to make terrible clay again. And so that's the machine. It's a pretty simple setup. I have my machine, I have a couple of supplies over here. Once I get going with the stone on the dop, I really don't need much else besides the splash pan, water if I need it, and everything is within arm's reach here. I have an overhead light as well as my faceting light that's adjustable. And next to me over here is where I keep my diagrams and whatnot. So I can either open this up and position it so I can look at things easily. It's good to have a reference chart for your refractive index and critical angles and things in case you need to double check a diagram or want to just kind of cut on the fly, which I don't do a lot. But it's a good sanity check sometimes, or converting your 32 to 64 to 96 index. And then it's just a bunch of diagrams and things. Some of those are private diagrams. You can get this one from Marco Voltolini on the gemologyproject.com, and that's a little marquise cut. And that's all I need to do to cut a stone over on this side. Over here is my cut stones. I think I've cut like 133 now, something like that, plus or minus. I didn't categorize all the stones that I've cut because I cut a couple of small ones that I just kind of lumped in with other ones. And then I've got, tape for shipping. And over in the back corner here is my shipping station, which is just a bunch of padded envelopes. And I've got some someone bought a stone the other day and I forgot to put it in one of these, but I've been sending them out in this in case they want to put the stone in here, or they get sent out in the gem jars that I keep them in. So over there is the sort of cutting workstation side of it, and over here is essentially the prep/storage side, which my loop usually hangs out over there because I need it for cutting, but sometimes I need to look at a stone closer over here. And the lighting's not quite as good over here right now because it's earlier in the day. But I can sit down and, essentially this side and that side, I can reach everything on the table in the middle anyway. And let's go through over here. We've got a bunch of rough that I have categorized into a relatively new little tool tray, essentially. I've got some bigger things up there, some stickers. If you watch the video, so I talked to Arya Akavan of Surgical Precision's Gems, and he is working to develop new colors and gem facet grade material like sapphire and spinel and whatnot. This is one of his experiments, which was supposed to have cobalt in it, but wound up having no cobalt because of reasons. If you're interested in synthetic gemstones and their growth and history, especially in regards to the first rubies synthesized in the United States, I made a little documentary about that where I talked to him. And this cuts up a pretty nice yellowish stone. And I've heard he has some newer material coming out that he may or may not live stream as he opens it. So if that happens, I'll share it on my socials as well and try to get people to join in to watch the fun and see, you know, a first time ever sapphire be displayed. I've got some larger chunks, I've got small pieces, got some nice aquamarine. You know, I'd like to have a little bit of variety of things and maybe some more unusual things like petroleum quartz, which is notoriously fractured and has, you know, petroleum pieces in it. It's kind of fun to cut and see the finished product. And over in this, I have a bunch of my sunstones from the Spectrum Sunstone mine that we went to recently. I just put all the sunstone away, but I am about to start working on this commission from someone relatively close by, and we're gonna see if we can get anything out of this big piece of sunstone. So I'll be cutting it there. And then this is a really rich, it's got some schiller and it's got a rich red to it. I think that'll cut a really nice stone, but I got to get started on that pretty soon. And so I can, you know, pick my rough. I have a bunch of dops over here. You have flat dops and cone dops. I don't use my little V-shaped dops as much. I don't cut a lot of things with keels on them. If they're small enough keels, I can just use a round dop anyway. And because I use wax and super glue as a hybrid method, I don't necessarily need the V-dops unless it's a larger stone anyway. I got some sunscreen just in case I get a little sun behind me. And then I grab a stone, grab a dop, and position it in my, it's a dop transfer jig, but it's also useful for mounting your stone, where my preferred technique right now is to use a little bit of wax. This is wax from one of those Baby Bell cheese wheels that you can buy in the store. And this has been, it's several months old, but it's still, you know, it's wax, so it's still waxy and pliable. And I can squish a stone down in there to keep it stable so it doesn't fall out if I do that. And then pick the right size dop, get it all dopped up. And these are held in a little tapped plastic block that was 3D printed by Mike. I think he tapped the threads. And so I can put those in there if I can get this, and then, you know, line up the stone and put it down in there. If you've watched any of my faceting videos, you've seen the technique for that already, so I won't go through that now. But I think I've got a pretty good system now where I can very, very quickly choose a stone, maybe preform it a little bit over there, or go out into the garage and cut it. Crammed in the corner of my garage is a 6-inch high-tech diamond trim saw with a couple of modifications by the person I bought it from. Very important modifications. And this came with a lot of blades, so I got a couple scattered around, a little stack of them for various uses. I use mostly the thinner ones. I think these are the really cheap ones from China, but there's like a super slicer, and I really also like the gold this style blade. It's really good for, you know, chunking through bigger pieces and things that I don't have to worry about rough retention. Like some of these garnets, I can slice up with those pretty easy. Whereas if I had a limited amount of, so there's rutile going through it, but I have a lot of this, but if I had a smaller piece, then I might want to use a thinner blade on that to preserve it and reduce the potential for fractures. get some wax on it. I use green wax with a lot of shellac in it. This is a little bit darker than some of the wax that you might find out there in terms of the green stuff. The darker the green, the more shellac it has generally. This is from Ron's Rocks on eBay, I think. And put some wax on a stone using the alcohol lamp. Make sure that you have some clean burning fuel in there. I can't remember what the fuel is right now, but and I've got some tools like my lighter. The pliers were for something else at some point, but it's good to have some leverage now and then. Calipers, pen for writing on the gem jars, a little light. I need a better gem light, but that works for now. I've got an X-Acto blade for cutting off the wax during transfer, or if I need to manipulate it a little bit while it's still liquid hot, and a little 4-prong grabber for picking up stones, like this piece of fire obsidian that I've had sitting out for a while because I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it. You got tweezers, and that's pretty much all you need. Oh, and then this is probably the last thing that's new. This is by Pickup Media. This is a gem light, or the gem loop is what it's called. And it's kind of a ring light-esque thing where we've got 3 brightnesses of light, both in terms of white and warm light. And then this is a little extra light that attaches to the front here. That just turns on automatically if the thing is on. And that adds a little bit of, it's called the sparkle light, I think. And there's a filter that's supposed to help with sparkle, but I don't want to misrepresent the sparkle of a stone by faking a sparkle, so I leave that off. And this has a 5 times magnifier on it right now. It comes with a 5 times and a 1 times magnifier that just attaches via magnets, which is nice for removal and whatnot. And that clips on the front of the phone on the video side, simply. And then if we go back to that fire obsidian, we got to find the right focus for it. And we turn on the light. And we zoom in. This is going to be pretty dirty because it's been sitting out. But you can start seeing the fire obsidian better, at least. And if I took a little bit of time, I might be able to get a better shot of that. But that's kind of what it gives you, a little better representation of the stone, even more even lighting. Whereas, without it, you saw what that was like, where it's pretty black. I have to hold it farther away in order to get it to focus and whatnot. But that was more of an investment for the marketing side of things, because I was having a hard time photographing accurately a lot of the stones that I would cut, because there's things called head shadow, where if you have this black phone right in front of the stone, then that starts to reflect in the facets and make them look darker than they are. Whereas if you were just looking at the stone, called head shadow, because it's essentially like your head is reflecting in the facets and keeping them dark, but the phone exaggerates that and makes it look worse than it is. And so I've been starting to get better photographs for sales and whatnot. And so that's the basic tour of Donahue Labs. Everything is relatively compact. We have a house, but I have to kind of keep things corralled because I don't want my daughter to get into things, and she still kind of walks around and tries to grab the X-Acto blade or my more delicate things like the finished stones or the sharp pointy calipers. And so I got to keep things corralled over here for now. If you have any questions or are interested in digging into anything that I've talked about in more detail, feel free to leave a comment and I'd be happy to make a video about it. And also be sure to go check out my Patreon and Etsy shop and blah, blah, blah. I'll just leave it with my business card. There you go. If you need to find me, it's easy to do.